Welcome to Between Two Ovaries, your go-to for all things women's health.
A lot of people just say like, oh, my vagina.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that's all of the above. That's not your vagina.
No.
Well, it is.
We're here to cut through the confusion, bust some myths, and give you the facts straight from the experts.
You cannot still believe the amount of people that come to a gynecology clinic saying that they don't look right down there and they need something doing about it.
We're keeping it real, bringing you honest conversations about topics that matter to you.
Everything goes back to the menstrual cycle. Yes, it's a low-risk procedure, but it's not a no-risk procedure.
From periods to menopause and everything in between, we've got you covered.
So whether you're here to learn, laugh, or just listen, you are in the right place. As soon as I said it.
So, we are very excited today to have Becky, who is an entrepreneur, a mum to 3 girls, and inspiration to so many. Becky was diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency at the age of 28, which led to the path of many failed IVF cycles, miscarriage, and eventually the decision to family build using an egg donor. Through her journey, she set out to change the landscape of IVF and gamete donation by providing an open, honest, truthful place for others going through the process of egg donor conception to link with and glean information from. Becky's on a mission to raise awareness of the challenges of infertility as well as donor conception as an alternative path to parenthood.
Thank you so much for being on with us today, Becky. We're really excited to chat with you and we have lots of questions for you. So although you're doing a really amazing job engaging with and providing information for people about donor conception and related topics, I think a lot of our listeners will be in the dark about what donor conception is. And we are going to sort of ask you quite a few questions to help enlighten them and provide more information for everyone. So yeah, thank you for being on here with us.
Amazing. So can we
Thank you
start?
for having me.
Can we start with something that, like, I actually need to ask myself? What is donor conception? Like, the ins, outs, what are we talking about?
So, yeah, I mean, I didn't even know donor conception existed before I needed it myself. So I think it's great to be able to open up this conversation. But essentially, it's where somebody needs either sperm, egg, maybe both sperm and egg, or an embryo donated to them to enable them to have a family. So, for example, it may be that you are in a LGBTQ plus couple where you may not have all the required gametes to be able to make a baby. Yeah. And so you may need to use an egg donor or a sperm donor. Maybe you also need surrogacy as well. Or it might be, like in my own case, that there's a medical diagnosis, which means that you can't use your own egg or sperm, and so you need to use egg or sperm from a donor as well. It may also be that you are solo, so you don't have a partner and you are wanting to build a family, and so you will need the help of a sperm donor. And I think there's so many different reasons why people might need a donor. It might be genetic reasons, it might be, like I said, medical, but there can be the similar sort of complexities along the way. But people can come to this either with kind of excitement and hope, say this is a path that allows you to become a parent, say if you thought that might never happen, or it might actually, you might come to it after, like myself, a long, difficult journey where things haven't happened in the way that you've imagined, and then you have to contemplate this as a new path to parenthood.
Mm-hmm. And would you feel comfortable speaking about your fertility journey with us today and our listeners?
Yes, I'm more than comfortable.
The big question.
So as you said in the beginning, I was 28 when I was diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency, and that diagnosis came after I came off the pill. We kind of said that we'll see what happens. We weren't actively trying, but it was like, if it happened, it'd be great type thing. So try not to put any pressure on. And after I came off the pill, it was sort of around the first few months, my cycles were all over the place. After about 6 months, my cycles were very, very short. So they were either sort of probably on average around 20 days, 19, 20 days, but I had some as short as 12 and 14. And so I I always talk about the fact that I don't think there's enough education in schools about how to make a baby, and I myself wasn't educated on all that goes into making a baby, so I sort of started down the Dr. Google route.
That is such a good point, and we say this all the time about education, because people genuinely, we were at an event last week and people don't understand the menstrual cycle, and you have a menstrual cycle, but they don't understand why there are different hormones at different points, why you need different hormones at different points to make a baby, why you need different hormones at different points if you're going to have HRT. So it's not actually just for this point in your life, it's for the whole of your life. And people, I think if you don't understand those fundamentals, then you can't extrapolate it to different bits of your life.
And we've also talked about how common it is for women to have that moment of like, okay, so all the way through your teenage years and then your 20s, you're sort of trying not to get pregnant. And you're told that, you know, if you even like sniff a man around the time of ovulation, you might accidentally get pregnant.
It's true.
Just any time.
It is true.
But then
you're just like, don't get pregnant, don't get pregnant.
And then as soon as you come off contraception, you're like, right, well, that means I'm going to get pregnant straight away. But you don't, because it's normal to not get pregnant straight away.
It is normal, but it doesn't feel like that. And
No,
I feel
it doesn't.
like you're probably the same as I am, that you felt like as soon as you came off contraception, you'd be like, right, so if I'm pregnant next month, that means I'll be having a baby in May, and I'll be like, and then you're like, oh my god, this isn't that,
it's not
this doesn't happen like this.
If you just had that kind of basic understanding from school or whenever that it's quite normal to not get pregnant straight away, and it can take up to 2 years, then you wouldn't panic so much about it. There's definitely a lot of unnecessary worry out there, I think, because of that lack of
seen on social media
basic understanding.
This girl who's like testing every like week. And she's only in like week 4, and I'm like, babes, it's going to take a little bit longer than that.
That's going to be expensive in pregnancy.
I mean, I was crazy while I was trying to get pregnant, honestly. I think it's really, and even I did have some knowledge, I would say. But it's a really difficult time, and I think the idea that there might be something wrong is really hard to shake, and until you have a bit more understanding, or you know, you have a diagnosis or you have a pregnancy, then the waiting game is really difficult. I think
very
for
difficult.
a lot of people.
I think people genuinely, it's that, so you have sex on the Monday and do the pregnancy test on the Tuesday, right? And you're like, no, that's not how it works.
You went to the toilet just after with the test ready.
But people don't get it. Like someone the other day was just like, so we've missed a period and we're pregnant, so we're pregnant. I was like, okay, so that means you're week 4, and they're like, what? And I'm like, it is really confusing, but I promise you it means that you're 4 weeks pregnant.
I mean, you're taught the absolute bare minimum at school to pass a test, not for life and what you actually need to know.
It's true. Yeah, sorry, we've gone off on a tangent there.
When you come off the pill, you made a really good point. When you come off the pill, a lot of people, it will take a while for their periods to kind of get back into some semblance of normal. But you knew that this wasn't any semblance of normal. And I think that's when you said that you started to kind of be like, oh, what's going on?
Yeah, and it's exactly what you said there. I mean, I remember like just being taught at school how not to get pregnant. So my immediate thought was, it's really easy to get pregnant because they're teaching us how not to. And like, even if I took my pill like a few hours late one day, I'd be like, oh my God. But yeah, when I started down that Google rabbit hole and started to learn a little bit more about my cycle and what things meant, I was reading it, I was thinking, there's absolutely no chance for me to get pregnant in a cycle this short. Like, it's just not possible. And at the same time, and I never put 2 and 2 together, I was also having night sweats as well. So I'd wake up in the middle of the night absolutely dripping in sweat. And yeah, just didn't know what was going on. And I went to my GP, I think around 6 months in, and was told, no, just go. You've like come off the pill. And I know it takes time to settle down. But it takes time to settle down. So I was told to go away for a few more months, and sort of went back again, because I think I then had my 12-day cycle. I was like, this is just not normal. Was sent away again, and actually really quite patronised, I felt, by the GP at the time, who just didn't take it seriously. And I just felt really silly. Like, why am I struggling with this, and why do I feel like nobody's really listening to me? And it was the 3rd time I went, which was probably about 12 months in, where I finally was able to get them to run some tests, and I had my they were looking for my day 3 FSH hormones and see what was going on there. So I went in, had that blood test, and then I had a text message through saying results normal, like carry on everything. And just me being me, having been down the Google rabbit hole, I kind of wanted to know how normal they were. So I said, oh, could I have a copy of my results? And I remember going to pick them up on a sort of a Friday before a bank holiday weekend.
Always.
And
Always.
pick them up. Always, I know,
the
on the way back
case.
from work, end of the day, picked them up, sat in the car, opened it up, and I just looked at it and I thought, well, I'm sure everything I've read that's a high FSH number. Not, I think it wasn't super high, but it was about 20, and I was thinking that doesn't seem right.
Maybe we should just clarify what FSH is as well, because a lot of our listeners might not know that. So we do have an episode which is how to get pregnant, where we do talk a little bit about what happens in your ovaries. But FSH is follicle stimulating hormone, so it's released by a little gland in your brain. It tells your ovaries to start working to produce an egg, and so when that level is really, really high, that's a sign that your ovaries aren't working, because your brain is sending more signals to your ovary.
Yeah, do you remember when we were saying that your FSH is like, come on, ovaries, do
it's
some
the horrible
work?
coach.
So it gets higher and higher, because it's just like, you're still not working, come on.
And so it goes higher around perimenopause, menopause. When your ovaries are no longer producing eggs, then your FSH stays very high.
Okay.
And really at the start of your cycle, it actually should be nice and low, which is where brings us into your result.
Exactly. And so I was kind of went down the Google rabbit hole again that weekend, because I couldn't speak to anybody medical, and was like, I don't think these are normal. Convinced myself that I was never going to be a mum, and all these other things. I catastrophized. And I remember contacting the GP the following week, and they were just like, oh sorry, we thought they were mid-cycle results. So I was thinking, you know, when you feel like you're the one having to educate. And so I ended up finding somebody privately, a gynecologist that could help me make sense of those, and he was brilliant. And he wanted to run those tests again. He wanted to run an AMH test, so my anti-Müllerian hormone, and I had those done fairly quickly. And I still remember when he phoned me at work, and he was like, are you sitting down? And basically, you know, when someone says that, you know, that's not good news, and sort of said,
warning
like,
shot.
my FSH was still high, but it was, and my AMH was 0.7, which for someone who was 28 is incredibly low. And I it was one of those things, although we were sort of trying but not trying, and when you suddenly faced with the fact that you may never have a baby, suddenly it becomes the most important thing in your life. And so we had a consultation with him, and he said, look, you could try IVF, because you are young, hopefully your egg quality is still there, you won't get the huge numbers of eggs, but if you're going to do it, you kind of need to do it now rather than wait, because your egg reserve is looking low. So we kind of were fast forward and catapulted into this whole new world of fertility treatment, where 6 weeks later I was having my first cycle.
It's a really difficult situation, isn't it, with the AMH? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but with the AMH being that low, it means that you're not a good candidate for IVF, because we know that we're not going to get the numbers that we need. But what else are you going to offer? And because you're so young, as the gynecologist said, if we got any eggs, we would hope they were of good quality because of an age situation. But when people come and they want fertility preservation or that kind of thing, when their AMH is low, they're not a good candidate for that, because actually you've kind of missed the boat in a sense. An AMH of that low is kind of almost not there. And we're talking kind of over 17 would be normal. So it's kind of very on the low side. So it's that. We know that AMH, which is your anti-Müllerian hormone, which is your fertility potential, doesn't relate to you getting pregnant naturally. It relates to when we have fertility cycle and what doses of medication to put you on. But when it's 0.7, we know that it's impacting you getting pregnant naturally because you're not having regular periods. When you're having regular periods, it's that insight to be like, I've got regular periods, I'm ovulating on a monthly basis, I only need to ovulate one good egg and I've got a chance of getting pregnant. If you've not got a regular cycle with the adequate cycle length, then you've not even got that chance. And it's just
and it's a good point to kind of bring up that it's very good that you had that test with a gynecologist able to interpret the results with you. But we do see a lot of the time, I think it feeds into potentially not being listened to if you do go to a GP or someone, or just people trying to do their own research online and coming across at-home AMH tests, which are kind of dangerous, because if you are someone that's having regular periods and then you decide, okay, I will just do an AMH to see how long I've got, how much fertility potential I've got, it's not really to be used for that.
It doesn't work.
And if you then come back and have a number that doesn't make sense, you don't have anyone there to interpret it with you, and it can cause a lot of unnecessary panic. So it's actually really good that, although it's bad that you weren't listened to, it is good that when you did have that test, you had someone there to help you interpret it, because I think it would be awful if you got a really low result and then you don't have anyone there to explain it or tell you what the next steps are. It'd be a huge,
what would I do next?
blow.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you say, because I've had doctors say to me after all of this, to say, I don't know whether I would have put you through IVF with that level, which I find really interesting now, because we went through 5 rounds of IVF and my husband was always very cynical around, obviously we were paying privately. And
when I listened to your AMH result, you automatically would not qualify for NHS funded treatment. So then it would be, because the AMH is so low. So it would, I only work in the NHS, so it would be kind of a you can do. But I think I would be very much counselling you from the beginning that you would do much better with donor eggs. And it's like, I speak to people quite openly about where do you want to put your money, because this is going to be expensive whatever you do. So if we tell you that you're going to be spending £5,000 to £7,000, and it's going to be on the upper end because we're going to be putting you on the biggest dose of medications, and actually that's where the money is.
Is
Go
that
on.
per cycle? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so if you're thinking that it's going to be £7,000 and your chance of this working, when you're saying you're going to collect 2 or 3 eggs, I don't know, what are the chances of this working? Like, where do you want to put your money? But I think it's a really difficult conversation, Becky, when you're 28. Like, it's a really difficult conversation.
Do you think, can I just ask as well, sorry to interrupt, it's just so, if at that point, if someone had that conversation with you, so, rather than, okay, you might benefit from IVF, and then you kind of make that mental adjustment, okay, we're going to go from trying spontaneously to trying IVF. If someone had gone straight in and said, we actually think you should have a donor egg, or you might benefit more from a donor egg, do you think that you would have been able to process that in the same way, or would it have been more of a shock?
I think, I think it was mentioned in one of my first consultations, but I think amongst all the noise, I couldn't listen to it. And in a way, I think I needed to try with my eggs. Like I say, we were in a very privileged position that we were able to pay for that treatment. But I do remember, from an NHS perspective, my FSH was too high for treatment with my own eggs, but funny enough, too low for treatment with donor eggs. I kind of fell in this was sort of 10, 11 years ago. It was a really weird no man's land that I wasn't able to access any funding either way. But I think what led to us having more than the one cycle was, we got 5 eggs, 3 were mature on the first cycle, and we had 1 embryo. I think it was put back on day 3, so it was quite early, and I got pregnant. And I thought, oh my, this is it. That was over. That was that
one and done.
Hard, but maybe one and done. And I was in that really naive bubble that you think that positive pregnancy test will equal a baby, and
but it should, Becky. It should,
and it should.
I love it when people get pregnant and they've already bought an outfit and they've got their pram and they're planning the maternity, because that's what it should be like. So I still love that people live in that bubble, and I still love it when it works.
I'd love to be back in there,
because it is so nice, and that's how it should be.
I think it's also it's really important to know that isn't, like, if that doesn't happen, that again
Yeah.
isn't the end of the journey,
No.
is it? Like, it's one of those things where miscarriage, we don't want it to happen to anyone, but it does happen to like 25% of women, roughly. So having that knowledge beforehand that it doesn't mean that's the end is also really important. But it's so hard because you don't want to. If someone's pregnant, you want them to be enjoy
I
that.
want to be positive, but I'm like,
Yeah.
have you had your 12-week scan yet? What screening are you having? What are you going to do on your 20? It's not a gender scan. It's actually a scan to see if there's any problems with the baby. And then I'm like, please don't be negative, Nick.
It's so
but
hard,
I can't
isn't it?
help it. Like, I think it's just
It's being realistic, and we know what the stats say. And I mean, for me, it was. I didn't start to bleed. I went to have a scan. I had some pain, and they wanted to check things out. So I think they were a little bit worried about ectopic. And I had a scan, and everything was in the right place, but there was no heartbeat. And it was sort of 7 weeks. And they were, are you sure of your dates? Yes, I am. Because I had IVF. And then it was just the most drawn out sort of 3 weeks of come back next week. We'll see whether things have developed. And I kind of knew deep down that it wasn't, but it was just such a torturous time because I was like, again, went back to Dr. Google of finding these miracle stories of where the heartbeat is shown later, or maybe it's just where my uterus is angled that it's just not being able to be seen properly. And so went back the following week, there was still no heartbeat. And that's when we came off the medication and sort of said, let's let things happen, as I say, naturally, which didn't happen. I then ended up in having medical management, which didn't work. I ended up staying overnight, really traumatic, and ultimately ended up having surgery, which was kind of the thing at the very beginning. I was like, I just want it done. I asked for that, but my IVF consultant actually said to me, because I had quite a thin lining as well, she said, I just want to be, if it can happen in a way that's not surgical, then let's try and do that. But it was just, I think I'd gone through this whole, oh, will I ever be a mum? And then suddenly I was pregnant, and then it was just, it felt like everything had been pulled from under me. It was like where the realization, I think, set in around, oh my God, this actually might mean that this might not happen. So yeah, that was probably one of the lowest points of the whole journey.
It's awful, and I feel like we've discussed at length that miscarriage is just crap, and it's just like there is just no two ways around it. And we can try and take a positive slant on everything because you got pregnant after your first egg collection, and then it would be very difficult for me to not use my own eggs again because I'm like, but I got pregnant,
there was hope,
so
exactly.
there's hope. But miscarriage is just rubbish, and it's rubbish because medical management's not guaranteed to work, surgical management's not guaranteed to work. So we have a lot of people that come through in exactly the same situation as yourself and say, I just want surgery, I want it done as quick as possible, and I just want to I want to have the pregnancy gone because it's just I don't like it.
You get that closure, wouldn't you?
But that fails in 1 in 20 people, which is still a lot of people. And
So
it's just the drawn outness and the scans at the beginning, and I understand why we do the scans. I totally understand why we do them. But it's just rubbish, because if you know your dates, then you know your dates. And I know there's some evidence whereby, as in what you said, that like sometimes you're going to see the heartbeat a little bit later. And that's why they insist that we do the scans unless things measure a certain size. And I get it, totally get it. But it's just rubbish.
it's just
It's a huge loss,
and there's
isn't it?
nothing you can say.
No.
Yeah.
I think, and like just as you said there, the drawn outness of it is so difficult, because if you're someone that wants to be pregnant, all you want to do is get it kind of wrapped up so that you can start trying again a lot of the time. And you also need a lot of support during that time. So now I think that it's changed. You can actually have time off work after you've had a miscarriage, rather than needing to take annual leave or sick leave. Like it is more recognised now. Yeah, well, I think, it's the conversation has changed a lot now, but previously I think a lot of people probably felt pressured to continue working through. And even did you? Yeah, I think it's unfortunately really common. Whereas things are slightly changing now, and it's still it's a little bit more of an open conversation, but it's very much person specific and job specific as well. But you do really, it's such a huge loss, especially if you've been trying to get pregnant or going through IVF. You're already at that really vulnerable state, and then to lose a pregnancy, and not have any support around you is just really detrimental to your mental health.
It's
really
difficult
sad,
because if you tell people that you've had a miscarriage, which is kind of, we say it's nice to tell people that you're pregnant, because if you do have a loss, you want those people around you if you do have a loss. But that means that you're telling them that you're trying to get pregnant. So then that means every time that they see you, or you don't pick up an alcoholic drink, or you're doing whatever.
They're reading.
And I feel like the pressure is a whole other level of... So I don't know what the right answer is, because I don't think there is a right answer. But
everyone's different, I suppose. It might be the right thing for you to not tell anyone you're pregnant, and you also might be someone that doesn't want to talk about a miscarriage, but then equally, if you would find it useful, you should be able to. You should feel comfortable to share.
It's such a hard thing to go through without anybody knowing, because I think you can't just leave it at the door when you go to work. And I mean, the other work I do is fertility matters at work, and we educate workplaces about what it means to go through fertility treatment, but also loss as well. And that stems sort of from my own experience. I mean, I worked in HR, and I never even knew anybody who'd been through IVF or anything, because no one felt comfortable to come forward and say, I'm actively trying for a baby. And I still remember the conversation when I think I was going in for surgery, and I said to my now husband, we said, look, we just need to take a week off. We just need to go away. We just need to grieve. And I said to my boss, can I take some annual leave? Just like short notice, but this has happened. And I was reminded of the time I'd already taken out for IVF, and could I take it in another 6 weeks because the client might. And I didn't want to let anyone down. So I went back into work, and it was the most horrendous time. And I think actually resulted in me at a later date then having to go off sick with stress and anxiety, because I'd not grieved when I was really needing to. And so I think the whole workplace conversation is probably a whole other podcast. But
so important.
It is so important, because you are going through these things, and often in silence, and there's probably loads of people around you that have been through the same thing as well.
I think things like this, you go back to work, and you go back to work because you think that work needs you. But actually, everybody's very replaceable at work, and they just want they are. And they just want to know if you're going to be there or not, and how they're going to do the job if you are there or not. And I think sometimes we just need to take a little breath and be like, actually, we're not that important in the workplace. You're important to yourself, to your family, to your headspace.
You look at the big picture, and it's your
but
life
it's
about
so
you.
difficult to do that.
I think that's why you need your HR person or your manager or someone to tell you. Like I was exactly the same. I had a miscarriage, and I was like, right, I'll be back in work in 3 days. We'll just get this dealt with. And Nick was like, no, you won't. You have to have 2 weeks off.
I was like, you're replaceable, babe.
Absolutely. But you sometimes need permission to be off, I think.
You do.
And so if you don't have that support, unfortunately, like you, Becky, with work, if they weren't, you were asking and they weren't actually able to recognise that that's what you needed.
I was even asking to take annual leave, not anything else, just take some of my holiday for it. But
it's so unfair.
It's
rubbish.
So just continuing on the fertility journey thing. I mean, obviously, like we said, because it worked, we then had that hope. I think if it hadn't have worked, then it may have got me to the point of considering donor eggs sooner. But we were sort of told, it's just, let's find that golden egg, let's keep going. And I can't remember the order of other cycles and what worked, what not, but I remember there was a negative result on a cycle. There was another cycle where I had that awful call from the embryologist the morning of embryo transfer to say, I remember it vividly, because they'd said, if we don't call you before 8 o'clock, assume you're coming in. And I'd sat there with my phone, like looking at the time, doing my hair, thinking, and it got to about 7 minutes past 8, and I'd sort of relaxed. And as I came down the stairs, the phone rang, and it seems so ridiculous now, but I was like, but you said you'd call before 8 o'clock. And it's just that I became so focused on these things. And that, I think that was a really low moment as well, just that not even being able to get to the point of having the bubble of the 2 week wait of it might be possible. And I can't even pinpoint the time where I started to think more about donor eggs, but I remember being part of some online forums. So it was Net Mums at the time, and people are cycling at the same time with similar sort of diagnoses. And I came across a lady who had similar thing to me. She was older than I was, but she had a little boy through donor eggs, and what was amazing about her was she never once pushed me towards that, but she understood my reservations. She understood me. She listened, and we built a friendship, and she actually didn't live too far away. So I remember we agreed to meet, and I met with her and her son, who she'd had through donor eggs. And that was a real turning point for me, because I remember meeting them in this pub, and he was in the play area, and just seeing them interact. And I suddenly realised, I remember getting in the car and just crying, because I realised that, oh my God, there's no difference between the two of them and two other, like a mother and son or mother and daughter in that place, that were genetically related. And I think sometimes when you've got this concept of letting go of your own genetics and having to accept in somebody else's, it can feel so alien that you just can't picture it. You can't imagine what that would be like. And I think that was the moment where I started to, and this is where the name Defining Mum comes from, in terms of sharing my story, just redefine what it meant to be a mum. Because I'd always, and I think we grow up with these visions in our minds that genetics equals parenthood, and that you will potentially have a little mini me one day. And I look so like my mum. It's unreal. Everyone's always like, oh my gosh, you could really tell. And I think I built this picture of this child in my mind that would be just like me. And that's quite hard to let go of when you're faced with this decision. But being able to see that allowed me to open myself up, I think, a little bit more to the possibilities. And I still remember conversations with my husband, and he was, no, that's too weird. I can't. The thought of my sperm being with another woman's egg. So he was really not sure at first. And so we sort of in the background kept sort of trying with my eggs, whether it be naturally or we actually had a month where my FSH came down to 4, and the gynecologist said, we could try a natural cycle. Let's just see what happens. And we thought, let's go for it. Let's give it a go and see. And out of that cycle where I had no stimulation drugs at all, I got 2 eggs and 2 embryos. And I thought, this is it. This is the miracle. This is what's going to happen. This was cycle number 5. And previous to that, I'd already started looking into donor eggs. I'd dipped my toe in, but I hadn't really committed, and thinking, but this is what's going to work. And I remember getting the negative test after that, and I was really upset, but I don't think I was as upset as I had been on previous cycles, because I think that was my moment of acceptance. I've had 2 embryos from a natural cycle and it's not worked. And yet now I've seen this possibility of still being able to be the parent that I've always wanted to be, but accepting that I might not get there in the way that I always thought I would. And that was, I think, the moment where we had the conversation. And I think emotionally as well, I just couldn't keep putting myself through it. I'd almost left my job. But it's all these things.
I don't know how you had the resilience to carry on that many times and go through it that many times. Because it's just a massive roller coaster. And I don't mean the hormones. I like, because then like the hormones are the hormones, is the roller coaster of your life is consumed by this.
Absolutely.
So everything you do is planning for in a 2-week kind of gap, whether you're trying naturally or whether you're having IVF. Everything is counted in these like portions of time. And every time you think that you could be pregnant, you're planning for, well, if I was pregnant then I'd be off for whatever. If I was pregnant then, I'd be off for whatever.
Exactly.
And it's just so much.
It's
to have
torture.
Had that many cycles. And when you count how much of your life that is, because it's not 5 months, that will be 5 cycles over, I don't know, years.
Yeah. And I think the hardest bit for me was the bit in between cycles. I was always much better when I was doing something, when I was actively doing something. But it was when the doctor said to me, we need to wait another cycle before we go again. I thought, what do I do with myself? It was, and like you say, it was all consuming. And I heard a quote from someone, this was like after my whole journey, where it said, don't let trying stop you from living. And that's exactly what I did, really. It was, my whole life was centered around having acupuncture around it, reflexology, taking these strange herbs and anything that I could possibly do. And I think there's that whole loss of control as well. You like, you're so used to in life, the more effort you put into something, the better your results.
We've
and
had this
you come out.
conversation
Whereas
so many
this,
times,
you just
Becky.
don't.
Yeah,
Honestly, we have
exactly
definitely had this conversation. So you've passed your driving test, you've passed your A levels, you've gone to med school, you've done fine at med school, you've done your foundation, you've got into training, everything's sorted, you've got a house, you've ticked the boxes, you have been there, you've ticked the boxes, you've come off your contraception, and then you're not pregnant. Like, it's not something that you can just try harder at, or it's not something that you can throw some money at the situation because you want it delivered tomorrow. You can't do that. There isn't like a throw money at it. You can't Amazon it.
But you try and apply that mentality, like you say, Becky. You know, you might see that there's a herb or a supplement that might help. So you're like, right, well, I'll put everything into that, and I'll buy that, and I'll try that.
It's 50 quid, but it's 50 quid. What's 50 quid?
Consumes
Like, we should
your
definitely
life.
do this. It says it's going to work. Like, of course it's going to work.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's hard.
Yeah.
I think when
And you almost don't listen to the doctor as much because you're going, but I've seen, and if I don't do that additional little herb or something else, that
she did it and she got pregnant.
It's like a crazy lady.
I've seen I've seen it.
Yeah.
She said she got pregnant after she had that, so I need to do that. I literally had someone in clinic the other day about something about steaming a vagina, and I was like, pardon what? And she's just like, I've seen that someone's done this, then they've got pregnant. What do you think about that? And I was like, I'm not sure how. I was just like,
Could be a coincidence.
also like, what is this?
This is the problem with social media because, you know, when you're trying to get pregnant or you're going through fertility treatment, you will probably spend a lot of time feeling rubbish and scrolling online.
And your phone listens
coming
to you.
across,
Oh,
your
yeah.
phone listens to you.
Listening.
And you come across these terrible, inaccurate stories where someone steamed their vagina and got pregnant, but there's no evidence behind it, and you're not going to look into that and read the evidence behind it because that person's trying to get likes, trying to be seen online, and then you're desperate to try and get what they've said they've achieved, so you'll give anything a go, and it becomes, you're so vulnerable in that state that you will spend money on things that won't work, and it will just all consume your life.
I do think people and companies take advantage of that.
Oh, 100%.
As like somebody
I
who
agree.
I feel like is pretty educated, I can look back and think like at various points of my life that you're just kind of like, oh well, if it's worked for them, it's worked for me. And I've seen people that are educated be like, oh, have you seen that? Like a lot of stuff with like weight loss and various different things, and people are like, they're just AI pictures, and you're like, are they? Are they just like
pranked?
I think it's really difficult to put things into perspective, and especially when
It's
you
terrifying.
want to move on and hurry up. And as you said about miscarriage, in a sense, like you wanted to wrap it up to be able to be pregnant because you wanted to be pregnant like 6 months, a year ago. And it's that kind of moving on to a next cycle, but you don't know if you're doing the right thing because have you given yourself enough time?
No.
You've definitely not given your head any time because you're just like, I
Never
just want
did.
to get on. No.
No, and because time is the thing as well. You're like, okay, well, if you're going through fertility treatment and you're paying for it, you've got money. You've also got the waiting time to get back into the clinics. But if you're trying to get pregnant, outside of that, you're conscious of your age and your time, and
Biological clock.
that applies to
Exactly.
fertility
Always
treatment
ticking.
too.
Yeah.
So it's just really.
But I kept
really
getting
tough.
told I'm still young because I was young, but I didn't. My reproductive cycle didn't feel young. It was like that race against time. But it's I think there's so much pressure we put on ourselves, and there was always that niggle of, well, if I don't do that, then will I regret it, and will that be the reason why it's not worked? And I think we're really vulnerable. I think, like you say, the things online that pop up, and you hear of someone else, and you think, oh my god, maybe I should do that. But some of the times I'd come back, and my husband would be like, well, what have you paid money for?
What have you ordered?
And I'd be like over the sink gagging while I was drinking this wheatgrass that had been put together.
She'll totally be pregnant next month. It's just
Exactly. So you do these things, but I think logic kind of started to catch up with us a little bit. I know you said like at the beginning that donor eggs should have been quite prominent in that conversation with us, and I remember my husband saying to our consultant at the time, look, what are the percentage chances? Like, just give me some numbers, because we'd not really been told that before. And he said, you're probably looking about a 5% chance with Becky's eggs, but with donor you're looking at probably over 50%.
Wow.
And that for him was a massive turning point. And I think for me as well, because I think we'd got to the point where we were so exhausted and thought, right, what do we want to be parents?
Yeah.
We want to have a child. And if you were betting your money, you wouldn't put your money on the 5% chance, would you? You'd put it on the 50%. And I think we'd been through so much that we'd realised that 5% wasn't going to happen. And so and like I say, we'd sort of dipped our toes into certain things throughout the time we were going through this treatment. And actually, towards the beginning, quite early days, we'd gone on the donor egg waiting list at our local clinic, but in the frame of mind that we won't ever need this, but we'll go on it because we know there's a long waiting list. And we made that decision after that final natural cycle, that this is what we're going to do. And I was told that we were probably still another 10 months, maybe another year away on the waiting list. And as I've already said, the waiting was so hard.
And
the thought of just stopping
years ago by then. Like,
yeah, exactly. I was supposed to have already had a child.
Yeah.
It was just that moment of, what do I do? So we ended up looking at other options, and this person who I'd met online, who I'd met in person with her son, had been abroad, and we spoke to a few clinics, and we found a really good connection with one in the Czech Republic. And literally within 8 weeks, we were out there. We went out for a consultation.
How did you find that clinic? So is that a kind of donor egg clinic abroad? Is that something that you'd come across through the fertility clinics that you were in, or was it something you'd found yourself online or talking to other people?
It was something I found online. So I remember having this like little spreadsheet, and I was comparing clinics in Greece and Cyprus and Spain and Czech Republic, because I'd sort of come across in my research that these were areas where people would tend to go to. And it had a good reputation from what I could see. We flew out for just literally 24 hours, had a consultation. And we always call it a bit of a leap of faith. And again, I look back and I think, gosh, we were going abroad for a medical treatment. It seems like a big thing. But I think at the time we just wanted this to happen. Yeah. And in a way as well, I think I had so much heartache at my clinic in the UK, in my local area of Nottingham, that I just couldn't bear the thought of going back there as well, because it just brought back bad memories. And I always look back now and I think, why did I not look at London or look at somewhere else? But we were kind of, a lot of the stories that were being shared at the time, which were all kind of in back forums, they weren't really as open on social media now. There were no podcasts, there were no there was no real information out there, real people talking about this like I am today. That we went with that, and it felt right enough for us to take that next step. And I would say at the time, we knew that donation was anonymous over there. And where I was in my headspace at the time, I was really worried and threatened by the thought of the donor. And that's quite like a vulnerable thing to share, because she was doing the most amazing thing for us, but had this real fear, which I know many people have, that one day would she replace me, and would my child see them as the real mum? You hear this word real, or would other people see her as the real mum? And so I think at the time that element of anonymity helped me to get there and helped me to make that decision. And we had a brilliant experience there. The communication was so much better than the clinic we'd had, and it felt like we were almost going on a little holiday, and it was like that step out of the sadness into some hope. And we were matched with a donor. We struggled a bit with the lack of information. We didn't get much information about her until she'd had her egg collection.
What information did you get at that point about her?
Literally, it was basically eye colour, hair colour, height, weight, education level. And I remember earlier on in the process, we had to fill in a form of what we wanted, and that was one of the strangest things I've ever done. And I was sort of filling it in with me, and they didn't ask for photos, but I was like, here's some photos of me as well. Can you please match me? Because at that time as well, I think it's really important to you that you don't want it to be visible. Not that we were going to hide it, but you want to blend with your child, and you don't want them to feel different, and so what we got on paper was pretty much me on paper. She was the same age as me, the same height as me, the same weight as me even. It was so strange, but you still felt really, I don't know, I just felt really unsure about how I was going to feel moving forward. And I actually had a real wobble at the point where we went out, like, oh my God, is this the right thing? And it feels strange. And I didn't like the fact that, having been used to being the centre of all treatment, that I was in the room when eggs were collected, I was the first one to find out, and all these things. Suddenly, I was waiting by the phone to hear about someone else's egg collection. And I think there was a lot of sadness for what I couldn't do, but I really wanted to be able to do. But we got 5 embryos, so we found out we had 5 embryos. We were out in Prague, ready to have transfer. We were actually called in a day early, and I immediately thought, oh, is that because there's only one left and they want to put it back? But actually it was because one of the embryos was hatching on day 4. It was like super advanced. So we went in and we had the transfer, had a lovely little walk around Prague, and came home and I just waited. And we were really fortunate that we had a positive test after that. And I had a very, very anxious first 12 weeks because I was bleeding at times. And I think no one really tells you that can happen after IVF as well. And it doesn't always mean miscarriage, but we had lots of scans. But we had just 2 days before Christmas, we had our 12-week scan, and it was lovely, and had a relatively straightforward pregnancy. And my eldest Mila was born in July 2016. And it's really hard to describe, because I was so happy. I was so excited to be a mum, but at the same time I still had these lingering sort of fears about whether I would bond and whether I would feel connected and whether I could do these things. So, like, for example, breastfeeding, I put so much pressure on myself that to the point I made myself ill, because I was like, no, my body couldn't do that. I'm proving that I am a real mum in the sense of this thing. So there was a lot of psychological things I think I was still dealing with, is what I'm trying to say. But
Becky, did you counselling before you went under before you embarked on egg donor? Because I feel like all of these things are like very valid, worries, and loads of people have these worries whether they have egg donor or not, about breastfeeding and being the best mum they can be and bonding, all that kind of stuff. So they're not even outside the normal kind of things, I think. But I just wondered whether you had anything that kind of put these into perspective. Did you have counselling? Because I know that our patients have to have counselling before they can go ahead with a gamete donor.
No, so I didn't. And this is one of the things I always say to people: have the counselling, go and have the counselling, because we hadn't got to the top of the list of our, I mean, I kind of wish that it had been offered at the point where we'd made the decision. And I know in the UK you have what's called implications counselling. It allows you to think through some of these things, and I think that would have been really helpful. But that wasn't something that was offered abroad. And so that's one of the things that I look back and I think I really wish I'd have had that at the time. I had a counsellor I saw through my work EAP scheme, but she didn't specialise in infertility or anything. So I had an outlet, but not in the way that really got me to think about those things. And actually, because I didn't see anyone else talking about it, I internalised a lot of those fears, because I didn't want to seem ungrateful. I didn't want people to worry about me. Even to my partner, I wouldn't necessarily say these things. I was kind of thinking, oh gosh, I wonder what they're going to look like when they come out, and will they look completely different, or will they naturally know that I'm not genetically them, which is the most ridiculous thing to think back now. And I look back and it makes me feel really sad, because I don't think I really enjoyed those first few weeks and months, because I was anxious. And this is the whole reason why I do what I do now, to give people a space to voice these fears and to validate them and to say that they are perfectly normal. But like you say, put them into perspective, because like now my Mila is 9 now. We then went on and we had twins as well, sort of 20 months later. So I've got twin girls as well. So 3 girls, aged 9 and 7. And all of those fears I had at the beginning, none of them have come to pass. They are now seem the most ridiculous thing.
She's not
But
got
at the
time for them
so
because she
real.
had 3 children so close.
I didn't.
You didn't have time the second time round to
Like
think
having
about
3
the
kids.
fears. Just quick, you had twins because you had 2 embryos put back the second time, which isn't something that would
and that
usually
wasn't-
happen.
Wow, so we feel like there's so much in this episode that we want to split it into 2 parts. So Becky's such a fascinating person and she's shared so much of her story with us. We're going to kind of cut this at this point, and then we're going to do a part 2 where we go more into, well, she will go more into her story with donor conception IVF.
It's like to be continued.
Yes. Dot.
There's lots more fun things to come.
There is. I love this episode.
So, just a little disclaimer. So, everything that we have said are our own opinions. They are not affiliated with where we work, and they shouldn't be taken as personal medical advice.
Yeah, if you enjoyed this part 1 of the episode, please make sure to leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts.
It might seem like a little thing, but giving us a 5-star review pushes the podcast out to as many people as possible, and we want to break down barriers, bust myths, and give out really good information.
And we want this episode and part 2 and the whole podcast to reach as many people as possible. So, if you want to be a part of that ripple effect, then please hit the like button.
And make sure you're following us at Between Two Ovaries on all of our platforms and engaging with our social media content.